Hello, everybody, and welcome to our December 2025 astrology forecast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by our esteemed faculty member, Stevie Lowe. So, thank you so much for coming back on the show. And how are you doing today?
Hey Cal, doing good. Thank you. Thanks for having me back. It's kind of soon this time. So I'm like, ooh, exciting. Get to see you again really soon.
I always love hearing your brilliant insights. So, thank you so much. Okay, Stevie, before we get into the details of each week, what are your thoughts for December as an overview?
As an overview, I love Sag season. This one comes with the tribulations at the end, at the late degrees, which we'll talk about a lot about. And so we'll feel that. We'll feel if it's less busy, but it's a lot of repeating issues coming from one planet to the next planet of the same situation from a different lens. So I think we'll get a lot of perspective and even some more downtime for processing despite the mutability and the wildfire-like energy for the holidays.
Such a wonderful point about the processing. And I think for the overview for December, we have a sense of we're finally starting slowly but surely to move forward.
Mhm.
November was a bit of a doozy with the Mercury retrograde. That was an absolute nightmare for me. Let us know in the comments what it was like for you. But not only was it a very watery month, we had five planets at a time, all retrograde. So as we get into December, we've got the Mercury, the Saturn direct, Neptune's going to station to go direct as well. So we do slowly but surely have a sense of moving forward. And as you pointed out, Stevie, we have a lot of mutability this month. So while it might be a good time to process and write down your plans of action for 2026, you're going to have to be quite flexible and adjust maybe some of your plans for next year because there might be some changes around the edge. So that's a wonderful
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, and you made a great point. All of the planets are basically going to be direct except Jupiter during Sag season. So there is that level of, Jupiter just went retrograde. You guys talked about that for this month, for last month. So yeah, we're just getting really into this like cycle of retrograde and it is Sag season. So we definitely don't want to expect kicking off the most grandiose adventures at the moment. And you're still gonna have lofty goals because you have the exalted Jupiter. So keep your goals high, but don't expect to, make a lot of headway immediately, like you were saying.
Wonderful point, Stevie. Okay, so getting into the details of each week, what are your thoughts, Stevie, for the first week of December?
Yeah, Venus sextile Pluto. That seems, Venus in Sag is fun for me. And I think Pluto is in Aquarius can be really evocative of, strange imaginings. So I think if there is like a funky, fun, weird energy to the month, this is like a fun way to start it off in terms of Pluto as a power position or some kind of authority or control issue, then maybe it's a time where you can kind of soften some rigid boundaries you've had or soften some kind of interaction you're having with authority for that
Such a
one.
wonderful point, because I think my key word for the first week of December is freedom, because Venus has just come out of her detriment in fixed water for a time. So if we go back to the previous week at the end of November, if you guys were out for Thanksgiving and around family members, some of our interpersonal relationships might have been a bit more intense. But as we get into the first week of December, as you're saying, Stevie, that Venus mutable fire, I want freedom, I want adventure, I want to be unleashed and not
Mhm.
tied down and be too intense. So, and again, even though we've got this Venus sextile Pluto, and Pluto is not a happy-go-lucky planet, I
Mhm.
do like the elements here. We've got the fire and the air, and of course, the air gives the oxygen the fire needs to grow. So I think this is quite a useful, even though it's a sextile, quite a useful aspect. I also think this is a great week, to your point, Stevie, before, to jot down ideas for 2026. We have the full moon energy. This is a Mercury ruled sign, so a great time to write down your ideas. And we have the Mercury trine to Jupiter. So these lofty, exalted Jupiter, bold ideas. But as we're saying, we probably don't want to take action just yet. Just mull around with those ideas. We've got some mutability in play, so they might need some adjustments. And tinkering around the edges, but certainly jot down any of those bold ideas you have for the first week of December.
Yep, yep. You have like a nice benefic sandwich happening. The full moon, the sun will make the exact square to the nodes the day after, but it's basically at the bend. The full moon is at the bending of the nodes. So think back to eclipse season, and there might be some kind of follow up going on with that. We always have these like midpoint crisis points, which maybe it's not a real crisis, but it could be definitely a callback to something that was emerging that you're currently working on. And it's a good time to kind of, like you said, not necessarily make a rigid plan for the future, but see how that might play out by the next series of eclipse seasons at this time.
Absolutely wonderful point. Okay, into the second week of December. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is a fun week because we have, from December 6th even, we have Mercury doing the harmony aspects, and this is over the shadow periods going direct. So we're tying up more loose ends. We're not done yet, but these are all really helpful for tying up loose ends or getting a lot of the things in order to make the next few weeks of holiday kind of madness work a little bit more for you. Then you have Neptune stationing direct. And so there could be some kind of lurking situations you've been able to avoid, things easier swept under the rug, things that you haven't really taken care of. That kind of thing kind of worries me with the station directive Neptune because it's almost like the you sober up a little bit. So just that could happen. And then you have the Mercury opposition, and both of those are those outer planet really strong situations happening. Yeah, and I wanted to hear your take on the Mercury opposite Uranus because we had two of those already, but they were in Gemini, Sag, and now we get the last Scorpio Taurus edition for the final of the retrograde movements.
Yeah, this is going to be really fascinating. And the overview for week two, again, it's a very mercurial week. We have the Mercury trying to Saturn. So, for any plans that you have in 2026, you can probably structure your ideas, get them down on paper. And to your point, Steve, we've got the Mercury opposite Uranus coming back again. Now, on an individual level, this could maybe speak to some bold, brilliant insights that you might have. However, I probably won't still take action for another week or two because we have the Mars square Saturn. So if Mars is like the foot on the gas, Saturn really wants to say no. And when we have a difficult aspect between the two, we're not likely to move very fast. And this is compounded with this very nebulous Neptune stationing to go direct at the critical degree of Pisces. So you might have some bright ideas and some interesting creative thoughts, but again, just hold off on taking action because, as we know, any planet that stations to go direct or retrograde usually is one of the loudest planets in the sky. And with Neptune, the picture might not be quite clear, and especially with all the mutability still going on. So I think this will be interesting to keep note of. And we have the Mercury going back into its detriment in another mutable sign. And of course, we have the quick sextile to the Pluto. But I wonder on a mundane level, the Mercury opposite Uranus, I think we called it quite spot on last month when we talked about here in the United States, the Epstein files coming back into the news. And it was literally just weeks about all this Epstein news. So I wonder with this extra connection of Mercury coming back, hitting that Uranus a few times, coming back to the opposition, whether there's even more revelations that come out in the news. I think now it's got to the Department of Justice where they've now been told to release them. I think with Mercury going into Sagittarius, I still don't think we're going to get the full truth. We've got the South Node
Mhm.
going through Virgo. So whether we're going to get the whole truth, I doubt it. It's probably going to be doctored. But for me, Stevie, I'm wondering if it's going to be the continuation of some of these Epstein revelations. Of course, this can manifest in many different ways around the world, but that's what I'm focused on right now.
Actually, now that you bring that up, December 3rd is the next Survivor press conference on the Hill, and that is Venus sextile Pluto. So that's what we were talking about with this confronting power, but having this gentleness and this vulnerability and having this personal kind of Sagittarian standing on your own experience and then yeah, so that makes a lot of sense too, actually. And we'll see Mercury sextiling Pluto a week, 10 days later. So that's a great point. I wonder what that looks like. It's gonna be pieces of that story. And that is interesting with Mercury opposite Uranus too. It's squaring Trump's ascendant and it's not quite on the midheaven, but it is around the midheaven. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot more of that push and pull and, authoritarianism crackdown on it. And you're right with Mercury. This is kind of also this whole week, all of this mercurial shenanigan, outer planet shenanigan, it's like you said, you're just not going to be able to process the amount of stuff going on. You're going to have to just be like, I cannot react. I have to respond, which means take a step outside. Don't deal with it right in that moment. I mean, there's probably going to be a lot of fluster going on with this stuff. So personally and sure globally too. But
Those are such great points, and I didn't actually know that about the survivors and the connection to Trump's chart. So that's going to be really interesting to find out as we get deeper into the month. Wonderful. Okay, into our third week. What are your thoughts?
yeah, so we're starting the square to Neptune here, and this Mars squaring Neptune is gonna be ushering in the Sun, Mercury, and Venus all squaring Neptune within the month. So I think this is earlier we said it's gonna be a very similar pattern, but with from a different perspective over and over, and this is sort of like the first domino. And I mean, it's not a great sign that it's a malefic, I guess. Um, yeah, that is when you're willing to like die for your delusion, fight for it.
Such wonderful points. And I think people might make the mistake of looking at this week and thinking, oh, Mars going into its exaltation, getting some dignity. But again, I would still hold off on taking bold action just for a little while, because on the same day, we're going to have the Mars square the Neptune. Now, I always feel like Mars get square Neptune is like one of those dreams you have where you're trying to run from something, but you're in
Mhm.
quicksand and you're not quite able to get there. So even though Mars later on gains its dignity in Capricorn, still not for me just the right time yet to take action.
Mhm.
And I think this is compounded with the waning of the moon. Because as we
Mhm.
get up to December 19th, we're going to have the new moon in Sagittarius. Of course, this is a great time to set your intentions. But with the waning of the moon to that point, I don't think there's enough energy in the skies. And with that Mars square Neptune, again, just
Mhm.
hold off for another week or two to take any action. And I
Mhm.
think maybe to your point, Stevie, on the mundane level, if we can think about the sun as leaders, we've got Sun square Saturn, we have Sun square Neptune. To your point about the rule of law, I mean, you can talk about Jupiter as well, but I
Mhm.
wonder with the Sun square Saturn whether there's a leader around the world, and this could be in the United States, where they're trying to fight against the courts or the rule of law, where they're trying to say, do this or do that, and then they're ruling against the administration, things of that nature.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, this is also like we're seeing some really disturbing stuff with our interactions with this just citizens outside of Venezuela and Venezuela in general, and the Mars square Neptune, Mars, Sun square Neptune. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Hopefully, these things also were like there's going to be some kind of like global challenging to those murders, basically, and maybe we'll see some of that with these squares to Neptune, these murders that happened with boaters. And then you have Neptune is not just obviously liquidy, but it's related to drugs, so it's this kind of facade of using this and this, so there is, like you said, it's it's gonna be really worrying when you have every planet making basically repeat aspects like this. I think Mars entering Capricorn, I think for different for personal life, that's gonna be great for me because I'm a Capricorn ascendant. I'm really counting down the days. But I do think you're right about waiting because it's also like a bit of a false start. We have Mars is going to make its conjunction to the sun. The sun is going to catch up to Mars actually in January, and you guys will talk about that. And that'll be the start of their new cycle here for the next 2.5 years, and then we have the retrograde and all of this. And so their synodic cycle is starting over in Capricorn. They're doing their conjunction, and I think we're sort of still drudging in the past right now. And so I think when that renewal comes for Mars outside of the retrograde phase, it's going to be it's going to be a different Mars story. It'll be like almost shedding the retrograde that even happened last year. I know it's like long ago, but we're still in that like actual phase of their relationship. So that's a great point about don't get the notion that don't act on a false start.
Such wonderful points, Stevie. I totally agree with that. And I think the final point for here for week three, Venus square Saturn, yeah, it's brief over a day or two, but sometimes you'll find correlations in the market where there's a dip in the market. Of course, this has been a big theme throughout the United States and the world with these dumbass tariffs that keep kicking in. So I don't expect this to get any better. If you look at even the solar return for the United States, a lot of this is coming out. So in terms of financial markets, I'm not too sure. Venus square Saturn in a mundane sense, maybe another dip in the markets, but we'll have to see as we get to that point. Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry,
oh,
one last point for last
yep.
week. We actually do move out of shadow for Mercury's shadow is also on December 16th. And so that should tie up because Mercury is still going to, do all of the Sagittarius aspects. It's still going to cause trouble, but it's just we like to just make note of the shadow point. So I just noted, the shadow point is over. It's like a little too late to be doing any of your mercurial letter sending and holiday stuff. So sorry, but it's happening then anyways. So.
I love that point. Okay, Stevie, into week 4 and 5. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's basically more of the same. We have the ingress, which the ingress is really interesting because we have the new moon, then the sun, then the moon ushers us into the ingress, and the moon, as we know, is in detriment, which is furthest away from its home sign. And so there's something about that kind of dark moon just emerging into detriment right before the solstice that was one of the things where I thought like, okay, there is going to be some level of like internalizing, bearing down, bracing down, not necessarily the most often you can carry the Sagittarius vibes through to January 1st. I don't know if that's going to be as easy to do this year.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The feeling I've got for week 4 and 5 is for those of you out there who are celebrating the holidays and taking the week off, I think maybe, a couple of days around December 23rd might be a good day or two to indulge in a bit of fantasy. Yes, we have Venus square Neptune, but Venus takes its exaltation from Pisces. So this might be a good day if you're surrounded by family and like Thanksgiving, people are getting on your nerves, go and take a bit of a break and indulge in a bit of fantasy. Maybe not overdo it with the pleasures of life or over drinking, because you might get an eye roll from your partner or your family members. But if you're going to take advantage of a bit of fantasy, maybe around December 23rd might be a good day or two, because as we go into December 24th, we're going to probably get snapped back into reality. That Venus is going to go from mutable fire, freedom, adventure seeking love to, okay, I want some a bit more down to earth practicality here in
Mhm.
Capricorn. So you might be snapped back quite quickly, even for a day or two of fantasy at this
Right,
point.
and it kind of It's just a bummer this year because everything squares Saturn, squares Neptune, and then goes into the harsh day of light of Capricorn. And so you don't get that sort of carefree adventure, travel plans. Like, who knows how many airports are going to be closed by this time? Like, who knows at this point? So, yeah, I like what you said. Use the square safely, use the square to Neptune safely, but I did kind of want to say this month, just be careful with people, just be safe with people, especially if you're younger and doing holiday parties. There's too many squares to Saturn and Neptune, and that just if you are making bad decisions, unsafe decisions, try and have a safety plan for yourself because then you can do the Neptune square, and then you just have to like, have a hangover or something. But it's just with all of this tense aspects, and Saturn is very much gonna want to destroy you, basically. Or
Healthy escapism to a
yeah,
certain degree, but those
maybe
are
a
really
healthy
good points.
escapism. People are gonna be wanting to get lit this holiday season because they have nothing else at this point, so just watch out for that, man.
Such wonderful points, Stevie, and certainly make a safety plan. Absolutely. And I think
Mhm.
as we get to the end of the month, we've got that for a brief time, Mercury square Saturn. This just might be a sense, and that Mercury takes its detriment and fall from Pisces. This might just be a sense of, the it's over now. There might be some, getting serious thoughts about work coming back up into the new year. It's just a really another snap back to reality of, okay, it might not be too depressing, but you might have a little slight depressive thought of like, oh my days, I've got to go back to work next week, or something's coming around, I've got to prepare for 2026. So it just might be a bit of a downer to the end of the month, but it would only be a brief period at the end of
Mhm.
this week.
Yeah, I mean, Mercury square Saturn, people are gonna, Venus, people are not in a great place collectively. I think there's a lot of a lot of fear and kind of like constraint and uncertainty, and it's just not super. I think people might even act out and over purchase, and then by this time have purchase regrets. So I think I just also want to remind people we want to like celebrate with love in our hearts first and foremost. Like that's sort of the cherished part of like celebrating is, I think Venus in Capricorn especially is very much like just having a single row, a single flower that you picked outside, having a very classic just ribbon, having these timeless kind of staples that bring a level of like comfort amidst like the end stages of capitalism will be really nice. And it's just like do the simpler thing and don't go above and beyond. Venus and Capricorn really appreciates the sentiment of things, the actual work that it took to make something for someone even. So I think with that said, it's going to be kind of lovely to maybe watch the classic Christmas movies and do the sort of like just like the really low key things that we do that are really subtle, like just hot chocolate. And, that's very Venus Capricorn to me for some reason. So, I think simple is better because there is just too much squaring Saturn, squaring Neptune that I think we all could get really carried away in our own stories of what we think how we need the dutiful people that we need to be and like the high fantasies that we want to fulfill for people. So yeah, that was my little holiday disclaimer thing. Sorry.
I love that, Stevie. And you're speaking to me as a Venus and Capricorn myself, and actually have my return coming up. But it speaks to that Venus and Capricorn. It's a Saturn ruled Venus. So there's a bit more restriction here. So if it's going to
Mhm.
be an act of love, it doesn't have to be ostentatious. It doesn't have to be over the top. It just has to come from the heart, essentially, and materialistically, a bit more restraint. Because as you're
Mhm.
saying, Stevie, people out there around the world, and certainly in Western societies, they're feeling the pinch. The material life of people in the United States or Europe is getting squeezed by this cost of living. So people have to really think about how they budget and put things together. And that's why I like balanced astrology in terms of talking about the potential positives, but also the potential negatives, because I don't like the overly wishful thinking astrology where it's kind of like, oh, next week you're going to meet the person of your dreams, or this is going to be abundance and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes that's not the reality we're living in. And as you said, collectively, we're going through some quite difficult times right now. So find those acts of love in simplicity, I think I would say, as a Venus in Capricorn native myself. Absolutely
Lovely.
wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you for solidifying that. Yeah.
Yo,
Touched
you
him.
nailed it. Absolutely. That is me to a T. Okay, Stevie, I love this because you've introduced this into the slideshow. So do you want to talk about the moon to the benefics?
Yeah, so I every month I basically make moon to benefics. I do leave out the opposition and the square, just because I just want the harmony ones. I want them all. Some months you get a lot that happen at like 2 a.m., 1 a.m., but I'm Pacific time here in California, so adjust for where you are. If it's at 1 a.m. for me, it might actually be feasible for you to use it, but these are Pacific time. So these are all when the moon is going to be sextile, conjunct, or trine Jupiter or Venus. So I like to make this list because it kind of helps you one eyeball a handful or a potential few elections for the month and start to like dig through deeper. And two, I find that I get paralysis in terms of anxiety. It makes me freeze. Sometimes it's hard to do things. Um, and I also just have like a super busy life and I have to do a lot of correspondence work. And so I like to have this list because when I send things, I like to send it with the blessing of the gods. So we have moon carrying light. These are all applying aspects. And so once you get after this time, then you are separating. And we always want to catch them applying or in their exact moment of the aspect.
Wonderful. And I love this introduction, Stevie. And let's keep doing this because I think it's wonderful to have. And actually, even for myself, I'm going to take a screenshot of this when the recording is finished. So, everybody, if you're watching this, take a screenshot. And if you've got any times coming up, keep a note of all these applying aspects, moon applying aspects to the benefics, and see if that works for you in your time zone. I think that's
Mm.
absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Stevie.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Stevie, thank you so much for going through the first couple of weeks of December. Now we're going to switch gears and talk about what might be coming up for each rising sign. So, Stevie, into our Aries rising friends, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Aries Rising friends. It's gonna be a fun month for you all, probably more. If anyone's traveling, it's you guys might be one of the ones who are traveling, as you noted here. Um, you have the squares that go, the squares to the 12th house. Obviously take precautions with just making sure that where you're going, you're not going to be exiled there or something. I don't like those squares, and Mars is going to be moving into the 10th, and that's going to be for you guys. I think we are going to see a little level of the exaltation. Again, no false start here, but we will see that the ruler exalted and in the 10th. So it's like travel and then career, kind of like you said.
Yeah, wonderful point, Stevie. And just reiterating what you're saying, I will say I do apologize. It looks like some of the chart is cut off at the bottom, but that's just Cancer at the bottom there with no planets. But yeah, for you, Aries rising, your chart ruler, going into the ninth house, you've got the sun and its joy up there as well. There's a lot going on in the ninth at the beginning of the month. This is a great time if you're looking to travel or expand your horizons, especially if you're going long distance traveling. You've got the lesser benefic up there in the ninth as well. So that it's just going to be a month where that's highlighted for a time. To what Stevie is saying is that we're going to have a shift of those planets all going into your angular 10th house. Now, anytime you have planets that go into an angular house, they're usually going to be quite loud in your life. So, yes, that Mars is going to gain its exaltation and it's your chart ruler. But in your chart as an Aries rising, just be mindful of that Mars if you've got early degrees of Aries rising, because it might just square off against your ascendant. So just be mindful of how you operate in life, how you go around, any minor accidents, things of that nature. But with that Mars being strong, it might not be an issue, but just certainly keep an eye on that. And as Stevie is saying, we're going from the issues and the themes of higher education, travel, expanding your horizons, philosophy, to areas of life like career, public standing. Now, this Mars can operate in many different ways. On the positive end, it might just be more energy pushed into the area of life. On the flip side, just watch out. You might have some runnings with authorities, whether that's bosses, things of that nature. There may be some conflict, possibly. But again, always have a look at your own natal chart to see what other connections are happening here. And then, of course, we're going to have the Sun and Venus pop into the whole sign, 10th
Mhm.
as well. Stevie, the Neptune is going to be stationing to go direct in the 12th. Do you think much will be happening there for Rising?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the Mars, luckily for Aries, is the first planet to make that square. I believe it does make the square after the station point. Maybe it's before. Let me double check actually. Okay, it is after. Yeah, so Mars is gonna like so that station point is really gonna come alive when Mars makes that square to it. And as your ascendant lord, like Cal said, you want to be careful with that. The 12th house, if there has been issues, people, whatever wherever Jupiter is in your chart ruling that 12th, if there are people who have been in short-term or long-term care or in any kind of 12th house spaces or any kind of back rooms and stuff that those issues might come alive. We can sometimes say that secrets are kept in the 12th, but also a lot of secrets come out. So with the stationary point in the 12th, it could be secrets emerging, or again, it's sort of like whatever we looked over is probably going to be emerging, almost like if you sweep something under the rug and then you rustle up the rug, all of the dust comes out. And so that stationary is sort of the dust coming out.
Absolutely. Yeah, wonderful point, Stevie. Keep that in mind. Aries Rising. Okay, into our Taurus Rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Taurus, so you all have this transit in your eighth full sign house, which means the Lord is averse for now and very focused on shared resources, as we mentioned here. You have Venus sextiling Pluto in the 10th. And so maybe this is you challenging a person of authority, or maybe this is some kind of bonus from work or some kind of some kind of 10th house, 8th house positive things. I don't know if you necessarily ask for a raise at this point. I wouldn't go as far as to say that. But I would say it's a good time to approach these people in authority, or if you are that person in authority, you might find clients being very generous at this point. And so if you have clients and you are the person of authority, you might be getting an influx of business at this point. um, so that looks lovely. Venus is gonna have fun in Sag, and so I think the Venus folks around the holidays will be some of the really the life of the party ones, especially Libra more so. You do have that Mercury um, opposite Uranus, so I don't know. You might go too over. There might be just something, yeah. I don't know if life of the party is the right word with that kind of a planetary follow-up, but yeah, I think there will be a lot of drive to actually bring lightness with Venus and traveling through Sag this month.
Wonderful point, Stevie. And as you mentioned, for you, Taurus Rising, you've got it's quite an interesting picture because you've got a benefic and a malefic in the whole sign, eighth house. Now, this can operate in many different ways, but it could just all it's really going to do, especially with the sun there as well, is highlighting the area of life. So again, like we've talked about, shared resources, things to do with your partners. Just keep an eye on some of those themes that might come around because we've got an interesting picture. Yes, we have an exalted Jupiter ruling the eighth house, but it's retrograde at this point, maybe going back on some ideas you need to discuss. And what's interesting is at the early part of the month, we have Mercury transiting through the seventh house, which might speak to a lot of communications, maybe with a partner that you have, but with the Mars and the Mercury connection, there could be, and the dispositor there might be a connection with maybe a bit of conflict on the shadow side about shared resources. Maybe a partner is burning through your resources or something along those lines. There's certainly, it's likely to be a financial picture that's involved. But of course, like anything in astrology, take a look at your own chart and see what those connections are doing. And there's almost a sense with so many planets in transit in your eighth whole sign house. Sometimes here there's a lack of control because, as Stevie said before, it doesn't see the ascendant. So if you're feeling a little bit out of control this month, just note that it will eventually pass as those planets move out into your whole sign ninth house. Because again, you do sense that, especially as a fixed rising sign, if you do like to, by and large, be in control, you might have that again, just lack of control this month. So just keep that in mind that it should pass as we get deeper into the month for you, Taurus
Mhm.
Rising.
Mhm.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I definitely think that with the square to the 11th, there's it could even be issues with group stuff as well. I don't know, if you're a paying member of a group and there's issues with other members not paying or just yeah, look out for the incorporated 11th house to be a little bit challenging. Um, and it could even be sort of a feeling of being let down by friends. And so if you are feeling like it's tough this month, I think the first half of the month is not super great, but when we have everything moving into Capricorn, like that'll be your time. So just wait for the Capricorn transits, and I think that'll relieve a lot of the tension. I mean, it will because the squares will be over, but you also have Venus with triplicity, um, Mars being the exalted lord of the sign, just giving it at least some wherewithal, and it'll be in the ninth house. So maybe you have travel plans for later in the month, and everything's like really tight and difficult. And then once you get on the road, so to speak, it'll probably feel a lot more chill.
Yeah, wonderful point, Stevie, and certainly pointing out that 11th active whole sign house, Neptune stationing to go direct. We've got the greater malefic in the mix there as well. Then we're going to squaring off against those planets. So as Stevie's saying, maybe an ease as we get deeper into the month at that point. And the North Node dancing around up there in the 11th as well.
hmm
Wonderful.
hmm
Okay, into our Gemini rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
What do we even say for Gemini Rising this month? Because there is so much going on with you. There is so much going on with Mercury this month. So I think it's just so much busyness and a lot of it with these big bangs, that Uranus opposition is going to be really impactful. And then you have everything in your seventh house of relationships. So lots of busyness. It's very, I mean, there's no rest for Geminis this month. It'll be like you can rest in February, maybe, maybe mid-January. Yeah, and you have Neptune stationing in your whole sign 10th, and then all of these squares from the 7th to the 10th. So just probably feelings of having to really show up a lot. It's really funny here because you have Mercury and Jupiter as the only planets down there at the bottom of the chart, and everything else is above the horizon. And so it's like you will probably want to hide from everyone, but you will be forced to participate.
I think that's so clear, Stevie, because as you said, the preponderance of planets are above the horizon. So for you, Gemini rising, work might be a bit tedious, or as Stevie's saying, you've been asked to show up again and again. Neptune, any planet that is angular in your chart, transiting is going to be quite loud. Saturn there as well, and Neptune stationing to go direct. So as Stevie's saying, you might want to try and just go, you know what, I need a break. But there might be a lot of demands made of you because not only that, we have the chart ruler still going through for a time through the whole sign sixth house. So there might still be a work component there as well.
Mm,
Another issue that's going to be highlighted is your seventh house of partnerships, whether that's business one-on-one relationships or significant others. That's going to be an interesting mixed bag. Yes, we've got a benefic going through there, but we also have a malefic, and those planets are angular in your chart and going to be quite loud. Now, it's quite funny. My wife's a Gemini rising, and we're going to be spending some time during the month of December with our in-laws, my in-laws. So I wonder if it's a sense for me that I'm that Mars. I walk into the room and turn off Fox News. I don't know. So I wonder if we might have a bit of conflict. I'm going to have Mars eventually going through my whole sign fourth house. But anyway, I digress.
mhm,
The part of that picture might be a little bit of conflict with partners, depending. Take a look at your own natal chart, of course, like
mhm,
anything with this, what connections those planets are making. So yeah, it could be a mixed bag. It could be some conflict, or it could be with a nice benefic going through there that you have a bit of a break from work by going out and having a nice meal with a partner or
mhm,
something of that nature.
mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So it could be that square could be a lot of exhaustion and overwork, but Saturn could also be um delays and putting things on hold and just stopping things. So if you also particularly run into, issues that are apparently unresolvable, that is possible to happen with the 10th house Saturn. That really just angular malefic, especially if you're a night chart, you might experience that with the out of sight malefic in your 10th. So yeah, Saturn constrains things. So there could be some kind of forced constraints, maybe some like time that you thought you would get off from work where you didn't, any kind of what's going on in your life. So, it is just a difficult time, and I think Cal said it best. We have two angular malefics and sort of like one benefic right now that is direct and involved. And we do have, in the background, Jupiter is trining Saturn in the background here. It is moving away because it's retrograde, but um, that is nice, but again, we're definitely dealing with the retrograde Jupiter of it all now, and so a lot of things that were like on, they're not just going to be on as fluidly as they were. So I think those, Saturn is now direct, and I think that does give us a little bit more leeway to like make the realistic plans. But we always got to kind of expect those curveballs with this mutable situation going on. And as a Mercurial, you deal with this all the time, but your planet is still dancing around shadow period, ingress, regress, and so you're not quite out of the clear on that either.
Such wonderful points, Stevie, and great advice. And of course, as you've mentioned, we've got so many mutable planets kicking around. And for a mutable rising, that's a lot of work on your end,
Mm. A
one
lot of
way or another.
flexibility.
Absolutely. Okay, into our, oh, sorry. Yep. Into
Cancer.
our Cancer rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think Cancer is one of the ones. Obviously Jupiter ruled signs probably are feeling the retro, but when you have an exaltation lord in your first, it is sort of part and parcel of the being of you at that point too, right? So I think for you, you guys might feel that retrograde a little bit stronger too. You might start seeing um not that progresses made aren't kept, but that progresses made aren't continuing to excel at the level that they were. That maybe some of the progress is made we're gonna not go back to and we're gonna leave during this process, but it just might really slow things down, especially if you are one of the cancers who are feeling like you did experience a lot of this kind of life-changing Jupiterian exalted energy. um, Jupiter rules the ninth. So this is definitely related to astrology, travel, religion, all of those ninth house issues, education. Yeah, so there is a lot of possible more longer term changes happening for you that I think that with all the mutable stuff, you are gonna be one of the signs who is like really having to think about things and really embodying that retrograde energy of like withdrawal a little bit. So if you are feeling that way, I think that's a good use of your month is to just allow the process to begin of like what just happened with this. Jupiter is really all the way at 24 degrees already, so it's like it's almost like it's lived a whole life of its own in these past several months.
I love that, Steve. I'm really interested to hear from our Cancer Rising friends how that Jupiter has been treated you going through the first. And I really love your point, Stevie, especially if you've got any astrologers out there who are Cancer Rising and who've got that, of course, now retrograde exalted rule in the ninth. But it's quite interesting for you as a cardinal rising. We have all these mutable planets all in your cadent houses. So there's a lot of reworking, to Stevie's point, that might need to be done. And especially for the early part of this month, there may be a lot of reworking in the area of work or any place that you have some subordination. We've got still
Mhm.
Mars traveling through there. The Sun is highlighting the whole sign sixth house, and the Venus might give it a little bit of help as well. So you might just be feeling, I would say, my intuition is telling me really for Cancer Rising, it might just be you feel maybe a bit feeling a bit tired at this point in time. If life has been go, 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 this might be a time to really sit down, reflect, have a look around your office. What is your day-to-day life like? How do you really want to plan your day-to-day life for 2026 as we move on? And so, yeah, a lot of those themes might be highlighted for you. It could be health to a certain degree, but again, you have to look at your own natal chart to see what's coming and what connections they're making. As we get further into the month, these mutable planets turn cardinal and go into your whole sign seventh house. These are going to be quite loud for you. So the areas of partnerships are going to be highlighted, whether that's one-on-one business partnerships, could be open enemies, you never know, just keep an eye out for that. But it's going to be highlighting one-on-one interpersonal relationships. With Mars going through there, yes, it gets its exaltation, but going across your ascendant, it falls in Cancer. I don't know if on the shadow side, maybe watch out for any conflicts with
Mhm.
partners, but on the other side of that, when we have Venus coming through there, it just might be a nice time to take a break from work, go out and have a meal with your partner, something along those lines. But let us know in the comments how that's been treating you.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I think that sums it up pretty much. Great points about the sixth house. It really is depends on what you're going through, you know, to could be issues with pets and things like that, as Cal said. Short-term confinements for some reason, but um you do have that cadency going on. So there is that like, well, there's nothing I really can do about it except for what I can do, which is usually never what you actually want to do or want to be able to do. It's just what you can. And that's really what the sixth house is sort of like, what can you do right now? And then like we have to do, you know, that thing. And Mars moving into the seventh so that you know the fall lord of the first exalted, so Mars also ruling the 10th, and I'm wondering here if there's going to be conflicts with superiors at work, and or maybe there is like I don't know, some Marsy person that is catching your eye maybe or something. You know, if you like if you like a bad boy type, Mars transiting the seventh, Capricorn ruling the 10th of Aries, you might find a bad boy type at work or something. Yeah, so there could be some fun with that, but I think Cal is giving you a more appropriate warning than my dating advice, which is be careful if someone's like feeling like they're escalating and they're like very touchy or something, just like know that, okay, this month I just need to walk away because somebody might, you know, we like to say that Mars is tempered in Capricorn, and to a certain degree it is, but you never know what that person's Mercury and Jupiter are, and that they could actually think they're acting ethically in this valor. And so we can't just look at Mars being tempered because you have to look at the whole chart and of a person. And so you could definitely come across a Martian maniac. I have Mars Capricorn, so I'm going to be watching myself for traits of maniacness. Um, and yeah, you might, like Cal said, kind of experience that, a lot of attention on the seventh. Um, it's followed up with Venus as well, so there's a little sweetness too.
I really love those points, Stevie, and great dating advice if Cancer Risings you're out there looking for it. But that's such a great point because that Mars is going to be angular. So certainly
Mm.
keep an eye out for any overly touchy or I won't even say aggressive, but too much.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
okay. Into our Leo Rising friends, Stevie, your thoughts?
Leo rising. So we see definitely fifth house activity here. In fifth house, fifth house getting bummed out by that Saturn Neptune square with the Neptune direct. I love the beginning of the month with this, but then that square is just aching, breaking my heart. I feel like it's really gonna harsh some of the fun. Um, and I wonder if some fun is gonna be canceled, like especially if there are things that are organized with children, there could be situations where the activities might get canceled or restrained because of people getting sick or something like that. Um, so you can with all of these planets transiting through the fifth, by the time they all square Saturn and Neptune, I think there's a real chance of burnout. So yeah, just being watchful for that burnout. And then you have the ingress, which is like a very big moment for the sun every year. So the sun's big moment of going into your whole sign sixth house of like, well, what is the follow-up to this fifth house month? So I think the follow-up, if you do get burnt out, the sixth house Capricorn transits are going to be kind of a bummer, but if you sort of moderate yourself, um, the sixth house could be a real time of actual like recovery instead of just being laid out basically.
Yeah, wonderful points and advice, Stevie. I think for you on the positive end, for Leo Rising, again, as Stevie is pointing out, we've got your chart ruler moving through the whole sign fifth house, with the benefic moving through there as well, and even Mars. So, depending on what your ascendant degree is, you might have a little bit of, bounce in your step with a bit of ease of energy, especially with Mars in there. So this might be a great outlet for having some wonderful creative fun. If you've got any children, this might be a great time to go out and do some sports with them, something of this nature to have a good time. But as CV is saying, they are going to bump shoulders with that Saturn in the whole sign, eighth house. Now, the only sense I'm really getting here, and you have to look at, of course, your own individual chart, is that the fun might come to a halt, maybe because there's some financial issues there,
Mhm.
possibly. So
Mhm.
maybe you don't have with the South Node going through the second, we've got the Saturn, Neptune, and the whole sign eighth, the North Node up there as well. It could just be a lack of funds that you have to continue the fun. Now, that's not going to be for everybody, but that might just be one of the issues where at the beginning of the month, you're having a really good time, you're doing all these different activities, but there might be just a check in with Saturn saying, oh, we've either maybe overspent or put ourselves into debt, things of this nature. So certainly watch out for that. And it really goes back to Stevie's wonderful point at the beginning of the video is that when that Venus gets into cardinal Earth, into Capricorn, you don't always have to do things that are extravagant. Just enjoy maybe some of the simple pleasures in life that materialistically don't cost a lot, but you have a lot of joy with maybe making crafts with children and doing acts of love that way, as opposed to spending big on things that people can't afford, things of that
Mhm.
nature.
Yeah, that's a great point. And if you're doing any kind of like party planning, that could be a point of overspending. You will be like literally the best host if you're in any plays or anything that is like fun. It's all gonna cost something. So there is really that tension going on that I think Cal brilliantly pointed to. And then you have Mercury. It is gonna make that last opposition there. And so that could be like an unknown expense happening in within the home, Mercury ruling the second there. So yeah, it's I think especially the fun is all in the bringing like the light that you're bringing with you. You're definitely gonna, even if you're probably, running into at the time you run into it, you might not be in a great mood, but I think you're gonna be one of the like people that we all kind of need to bring us into the celebration spirit of things. I think a lot of times, especially for us Capricorns, we can just want to put our nose to the grindstone and just fast forward through anything celebratory because we didn't work hard enough for it or something. And your chart here is really like, no, we're gonna have fun. Like we are gonna have fun. We are gonna have a good time. Um, and I really appreciate that about you, Leo Rising. So bring the fun. Bring the fun at least for the first part of the month.
I love that, Stevie, and I wholeheartedly agree. I just love my Leo rising friends. It's like, let's go and have a laugh. Let's go and have a good time. And I
Hmm.
think for you, Leo rising as well, you're going to be thankful eventually when that Saturn and Neptune just piss off out of your whole sign eighth house. Just get out of there, get away. And I think the last thing I'll say for you, Leo rising, is especially towards the end of the month or as we get into the new year, if you've been thinking about maybe a new regime at the gym or get back to fitness, I think more than any other rising sign, it might be a good time for you if you've been thinking about fitness, things of that nature, is to do that new year, new you type of, I know it's cliche, but new year, new you type of deal where you go out and restructure your day-to-day life and maybe get into a new fitness regime, something like that, to that nature.
Hmm. That's a really, really great point. Especially knowing that that sun is going to catch up to Mars in conjunct in January. I'm sure you guys will talk about that, but that is a great day for so if the moon is waning that day, then you'll start a weight loss regime. If it's waxing, you'll start a muscle building routine. So you'll have to circle back to that, Cal. Make a note for January for you guys.
I like that the waning and the waxing of the moon and whether you're losing weight or gaining muscle. I love that. Yeah, keep a note of that, Leo Risings. Wonderful,
Hmm.
fantastic. Okay, Stevie, into our Virgo Rising friends. Your thoughts?
Virgo is, I think Virgos are gonna be, you know, like you said, to use your words, they're gonna be happy Neptune is pissing off into the eighth house at this point because it's like, where can you go really right now? Um, yeah, we have the mercurial fun stuff of the entire month. You have everything sort of triggering that nodal bending point. So there's a lot of flexibility going on for you all. But I do like that station forward for you. I think in this case, yeah, so if there is relational stuff that has been sort of put into the background, it's probably gonna come alive at this point, especially in the flow of all of these squares. Um, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful point. And I don't know, I've got a sense for you, Virgo Rising, especially with some of these transit, that life has been, especially when we get to this time, maybe a little bit annoying, a bit stressful. We're going to have a lot of these mutable planets in your angular fourth house. So the themes of home and family, private life are likely to come around. And especially if you're a day chart with Mars being the outer set malefic, you've got that Mars going through the fourth, depending what ascendant degree you are, it might be rubbing shoulders with your ascendant, but just generally in your home life, there may be some conflict around the holiday times or the holiday days. Now, that's not for everybody. I mean, there's two sides to every story. And so that Mars just might be, more energy pushed into the home life of
Mhm.
some factor or another. We still have a benefic going through there. So if you're looking to beautify the home in some way or decorate, this might be a nice time to do at the beginning of the month. And then I think what might ease up for you is as some of those faster moving planets move into your whole sign fifth house, because that
Mhm.
way you're going to be able to enjoy a bit more joy and creativity and pleasure. Even with Mars going in there, Mars is going to gain its exaltation. Whole sign fifth house, eventually it's going to make a nice connection with your ascendant. So if you're just looking for an outlet, maybe a bit of tennis or sport, depending how cold it is where you are, or doing sports with children. If you've got any kids, that might be good. We're gonna have Venus eventually going through there as well. So I think a tale of two halves for you, Virgo rising. The first half of the month might be a little bit testy, but as we get into the later half of the month, things might start to ease up a bit as we go into more of these planets into an Earth sign. It's kind of the sense I'm getting. The Saturn and Neptune picture, you're probably dealing with that. You've been dealing with it for a while. We've got Neptune stationing to go direct at the very last degree, critical degree of your whole sign, seventh house. So it might just be repeated themes of partners, business partners, things of that nature that you might have to keep an eye out for. And also, you're going to have your chart ruler go back through your whole sign fourth house. So again, bringing up private life, home and family. It's going to be in its detriment again. So I think eventually for you, as we get beyond December, you're going to be quite thankful for your chart ruler just to again piss off and get into the fifth whole sign house. I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's got, and you've got the Mercury opposing Uranus and then at the same time trining Neptune. So it's like, it's just so easy to like get triggered and then choose a bad coping strategy. So I think more vulnerable for Mercurials at this point, or if you have Mercury in a prominent place in your chart in general, just watch out for that kind of stuff because that's that's really how it literally happens. You just get into an issue with someone, you have that Uranus opposition, and then you go straight into the trine to Neptune of like, how do I cope with this? And so, the Neptunian coping tools that are healthy, like music and maybe the opposition is like experimental music, or you kind of work with the energies without having to sort of let them take over fully, It's like some things are always gonna happen, but you do have a chance to like have your own version of expression and kind of create your own circumstance of absurdity on purpose. I always try and do that. I'm like, if something like this is going on in my chart, what can I do to actually take this on so that I'm less scared of however it appears that I don't choose? And so it's relationship building 101 there. So
So beautifully said, Stevie. And I love your advice in terms of finding a healthy outlet for you, Virgo risings. If life has been a bit cumbersome, we've got the South Node going through the first whole sign house. And I found that when it was going through Libra, my rising sign, I just felt a little bit more drained than usual. So if you can find those nice, healthy outlets, whether that's music, to Stevie's wonderful point, just try and find some time for yourself if life is getting a bit cumbersome or people are just irritating you, especially if that's people irritating you in your home life, family and friends, things of that
Mhm.
nature. So, but yeah, I love that, Stevie. Absolutely. Okay, into our Libra rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Libra rising. I think Libra risings are definitely going to be also with the Leo risings. Some of the joy bringers this month. There's a really busy third house there, so a lot of plans probably. A lot of flexibility as well, and maybe even some of that sixth house stuff going in of like um I'm not gonna do this year. I'm not gonna do this this holiday. I think you have Mercury sextiling Pluto in the fifth to sort of kick us off. And so, yeah, I would say you all are gonna be able to like harness some real charming energy this month and sort of challenge people's grumpy moods and challenge like your mission here is like bringing the fun through your intellect and through games and through communication and observations and perspective. So I'm looking forward to that. Although I do think you're going to be, also one of these signs that is just so busy dealing with things as they come that it's hard to actually fully process them as they come, and that might come later.
I love that, Stevie, and great advice. And you're really speaking to me as a Libra rising because I've got a feeling what you're saying is going to come up as well. Because here we've got very busy whole sign third house. So, as Stevie is saying, we might be a little bit more charming than we were as Venus was going through her detriment in the whole sign second house. And it might be a case where you're just spending a lot of the month, especially the beginning of the month, if you're dealing with people in your local environment. It might be just a lot of short trips around the local community, being a bit more charming because by sign our chart ruler sextiles the ascendant, so there's an opportunity here to be quite charming and speak to people in our local environment. But to Stevie's point, with this mutability, might not be a lot of time to really think things through or process them. So I'd just say go with the flow at this point. There's going to be a lot of changeability, a lot of movement, probably a lot of communication. So even if you're not out and about in your local environment, there might be a lot of emails, things coming through in terms of work, because we've still got the Saturn and Neptune picture. Neptune is going to station to go direct in our whole sign sixth house. And I really, really can't wait for Neptune and Saturn to piss off out of our whole sign sixth house. So whether that's been related to anyone here in terms of health, I'm really looking forward to the time. Yes, it's going to be an
Mhm.
issue because Saturn goes into its fall, and these planets are going to be angular in our seventh whole sign house. So that's going to be its own story in itself. But
Mhm.
I've had enough of this Neptune Saturn story in the sixth. I'm ready for it to move on at this point
Yeah,
in time.
yeah, especially after this month of squares to it. It's like really it's it's really a lot. And um then you have all these planets going to the fourth house there, and then you have like almost this time where it's like, okay, I can fix everything everything at home can be fine. I think it's still going to be a lot of energy at home, but you have the exalted Mars to have the stamina, and you have Venus to add this layer of softness. So I think the afterglow of the holidays is going to be really nice for Libras. There is going to be that Venus is moving into a square aspect, so still, we're never just clear free from like challenges in life, but I think it'll be a really fun dovetail of like we had fun in the community and we're all about town, and now we're sort of doing our low key fourth house, midnight thing and midnight and winter thing, and yeah, it'll be beautiful. And you have the second house issue, so I think it would be also just insane to be like, most people are financially struggling. It would be insane to tell any one of these rising signs that there isn't a possibility of a financial challenge happening this month. But yeah, you have that Mercury opposite Uranus from the second to the eighth, so there is that to watch out for of like, okay, Mercury is going to make that and then go right into the third. So it'll be catching up on work missed or communications missed or some kind of that mercurial catch up until we're kind of clear and free from the shadow.
Yeah, wonderful point, Stevie. And going back to, I like how you're talking about the transition from the third of those planets into the fourth house. So as you're talking about, maybe we've gone from jaunting around in our local community to some of the home life factors coming in. So with Mars, could be a double-edged sword. I mean, yes, it's exalted, but it's going to square off our own ascendant. So, on the shadow side, there might be a bit of conflict at home to a certain degree, or it just might be more energy pushed into that area of life. We're still going to have Venus, the benefic, obviously our chart ruler, moving into an angular fourth house. Now, anytime a planet becomes angular in your chart, usually becomes quite loud.
Mm.
So I really like the point you were making before, Stevie, because I think that's really going to apply to us Libra Risings this month. Wonderful. Okay, into our Scorpio Rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
I think Scorpio, again, we have Mars ruling your ascendant, so that Mars movement is going to be significant this month. It's been a minute since Mars has been home. in exaltation, home, not home, home. And I'm just really looking forward to it myself. I'm not even a Mars ascendant. I'm not a Scorpio or an Aries, but I'm just looking forward to it. Um, there you kind of have to get through the last bit of chaos that Mercury opposite Uranus trining that Neptune with Neptune having had station direct. Um, if you have a situationship, it's not going to survive this, or I don't know how it survives. More dating advice. If you have a situationship going on with the fifth house, seventh house situation, that could be something where, a one-on-one relationship, a situation arises, and then you go into a fifth house coping strategy for that. So that is what to look out for there. But you do have Mercury sort of making a grand trine in the first, fifth, and ninth. So I think there are at least what you have going on in these houses, whether they be education related or sports related or physical stamina related first house. We have a lot of mixed messages here with retrograde, stationary direct, and now Jupiter retrograde up there. So this water trine was probably working a lot better last month for you when it was Venus and the Sun, actually. And it's probably a little bit more like what is going on with these houses. So I think obviously Cal is probably going to talk more about the second house and we should talk more about that. But yeah, what I see here is a lot of that 1 1 5 7 9 going on, and it looks kind of chaotic, kind of sloppy, kind of things coming back, having to, even though it's a trine, it doesn't look super smooth. So if you are going through these troubles, I think kind of once things get into Capricorn, actually opposing that Jupiter might help clarify things a little bit. Um, so yeah, just a lot of stuff for you guys. No big deal.
Great point, Stevie. And actually, you've tuned into something that sparked an idea in me, in that you make a really interesting point for Scorpio Risings in terms of that communication picture and that grand water trine you were talking about. Because I would say for you, Scorpio Rising, if you're not, depending on what's going on in your natal chart, obviously, but if with a fixed water rising, if you're inclined to not be as vocal as other maybe rising signs. Of course, you've got to look at the whole context of the chart. But I would say with this Mercury transiting through your first house at the beginning of the month, especially if you've got late degrees of Scorpio rising, if you've got something to say, I think this is the time to say it. This any planet that's angular has strength. So this Mercury for a time at the beginning of the month still going to have some strength,
Mhm.
especially if it has anything to do with maybe group activities or
Mhm.
community groups where you've really just got to say your piece. Maybe you've been holding something back, and now with Mercury Direct, you're thinking, you know what, I really need to say something about something that's going on, whether it's something about somebody's leadership in a group or something in a group setting that you're not. It's not quite sitting well for you. This might be a good time to really communicate your thoughts and your thoughts to others as well. And yeah, to Stevie's point, we've got a lot of activity with the faster moving planets in the whole sign second house. We've got a mixed bag. We've got a malefic and a benefic going through the second for the first part of the month. So some of the themes that might pop up are things to do with income, finances. It just might be a picture that rears its head for you at the beginning of the month. Then as we get later into the month, you might just be getting really busy in terms of getting out into your local environment around the holiday season. Maybe you're having a lot to do and, maybe helping the neighbors put up their Christmas decorations, whatever holidays you celebrate. Mars is going to gain its exaltation. Of course, that's your chart ruler. And it's going to make, by sign, it makes a nice connection to your ascendant. So, yeah, maybe you just got a lot of activity in the local community, maybe helping out. Venus is going to go through there as well. So, maybe in the local community, you're seen favorably upon by helping others, depending on what you're doing. But I think really that the overall picture here is that we have a preponderance of the planets below the horizon. So for you, it's just it's either you do you or you're spending a lot of time with people in your local life or your local community. And I don't think you have to spend too much time worrying about the wider society or the public at large. But that's just the feeling I get with so many planets below the horizon
Yeah,
at this point.
that's a great point. And like you said, having this sort of natural proclivity as a Scorpio rising to keep it to the chest anyways. And it's like, um, yeah, that's a great point. I think a lot of that inwardness, a lot of that, but also that even if this you might you might actually not even want to say anything, but you might just actually blurt it out with that. Because Uranus could really set things off like that, truly. It's just really good at setting things off. So
That's a great point, Steve. I didn't even think about the Uranus connection, but that's true. Yeah, Uranus, it's like if you got something to say, maybe you can't even hold it back, even if you
yeah,
want
it
to.
might actually just be forced, which everyone around you will be like, finally, the Scorpio is like, you said it without, without being this controlled saying it. You just, um, that's true. Or, when everything we have that, I kind of just want to circle back to this idea that you had about the 11th house as well, and speaking up to friends when we do have the full moon, it's square the nodes. And so I think what Cal mentioned about that 11th house stuff um, is going to come up even again with that aspect because, and especially if there was things that happened in that fifth house, 11th house area during the eclipses, um, that definitely could be one of the things that you're called to speak upon during the full moon of like illuminating it and putting it all out there in a sense.
That's absolutely brilliant. Definitely watch out for that. Wonderful point. Okay, into our Sagittarius rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Sages, I think you are one of the ones who are feeling the retrograde Jupiter of it all. Probably you might have felt, which is also like strange because it's your season, so it's like this time of year where you're infused with energy, but you also have the ruling planet retrograde. So there might be a little bit of wonkiness, feeling like off balance, not having the same like strategy that you kind of will normally have to get you through this time of year. Um, and with Mars in the first, you could also be one of the ones who is seen as like an aggressor or like, why am I always like, is it me? Or like people just like don't like me right now or something. I do have a Sag friend who's like, does everyone just suck right now or what's going on? And I think that's Mars transiting the first for sure.
Yeah, I love that, Stevie, and that point about your friend. I really like the point you made about it's quite, yeah, contradictory in a sense because it's
Yeah.
yes, it's your season. We've got so many planets going through your first house, but to Stevie's point, your chart ruler is going back hidden away in the whole sign eighth house. So it's quite an interesting mix of energies. And you should probably feel fired up at this moment in time. Still at the beginning of the month, we've still got Mars angular going through your first house. Just be careful if you've got late degrees of Sagittarius rising as that Mars comes over. Any sharp objects in the kitchen, things of this nature. Doesn't always operate that way, but just be mindful with the malefic coming through. I think what is going to be helpful as Venus moves away its long, see where that Venus hits your ascendant degree, and maybe just go and enjoy yourself for the day. Maybe go and get pampered, go for a massage, do something that beautifies yourself, or maybe go and buy a new outfit that you really enjoy. Things of that nature. You got the sun highlighting the first house, so you can really, shine in that sense.
Hmm.
And I think for you, you might be looking forward, yeah, to eventually the Saturn and the Neptune getting out of the way of your angular fourth house. That Neptune is stationing to go direct in the whole sign fourth house at the critical degree. Now, I have a Sagittarius rising friend who is having water issues in the home. So
Oh,
if I would certainly check this holiday season for you Sagittarius risings, if you have any leaks anywhere, go get it sorted out. With the
that's
water
great
house,
advice.
those
Yep.
planets there. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. And sorry, Stevie, go on.
No, 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 no. Just agreeing. Like, oh yeah, that's the station direct situation. Yeah.
Just be careful that, yeah, home life. But I think for you guys, you'll be happy eventually when the Saturn and the Neptune get out of there. And yeah, I think for you, yeah, a tale of two halves. Certainly enjoy that Venus as it comes through the
Hmm.
first house. It's your season. It's your time to shine. And yeah, that's quite interesting. You were saying with your friend about is it just people being jerks or what's going on? I think the one thing I'll say about that is we do have a preponderance of planets below the horizon. So I would say for you, Sagittarius Rising, you just do you this season. Do things that you want to do that you enjoy. Don't worry about too much what's going out in the broader public, whether that's friendship groups or even partners to a certain degree. You do you, and if you've got things in home that you need to tie up, I would just go out and do things you enjoy and maybe not worry too much about what others think this season.
Hmm. Yeah, and whether I think you're also one of the ones who are going to be bringing a lot of fun too. Like the Mars to me is like, you are going to be very snarky and it's going to be very funny and you're going to be cutting, but some of the best humor is just ripping your friends to shreds basically. I don't cutting it up basically. So I think Venus will give you kind of the grace to actually, be a little bit aggressive and a little bit, punchy, and the sun is definitely like it's giving people are gonna feel lit up by you. It's giving you are gonna kind of be able to shine onto people who might be a little more gloom this time of year. And again, you might feel that too with the Jupiter retrograde in the eighth. But Mercury is going to be moving through the first and ruling your 10th there. And so last last thing for me would just be enjoy the kind of Sun, Venus party vibes that you have, because I think that, 10th house stuff is gonna creep up on you pretty quickly and you're gonna have to just be present for other people and for work and seventh house, 10th house stuff. So
Yeah, that's a brilliant observation. To definitely keep that in mind, Sagittarius risings. Absolutely. Okay, into our Capricorn rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
I think for us we're just waiting on Mars at this point. I'm just like Mars. Yeah, I think we have a lot of cadence stuff going on. And sort of, before that it was the secedent stuff going on. I definitely personally have felt the retrograde Jupiter. So it's like the one angular thing for us is retrograde now. So I think we are just sort of background characters a little bit. We're like NPCs at the at the moment, just like come here, quest. I have an envelope for you. It's just not really up to us right now. We're just going with a lot of the flow, and what agency we did have with Jupiter there is sort of like slowing down a little bit. But we're gonna be, main character energy incoming, baby, a cannon bomb because it's our season. So, um, I'm not a Capricorn sun, but I still claim Capricorn season as my season. And so that just tells you a little bit about what it's a natal Mars in Capricorn is like and how obnoxious. We're gonna be the obnoxious ones this year because we're gonna have Mars back, baby.
I love that, Stevie. And I think out of all the transitions from one house to the next, for you, Capricorn Rising, it's going to be the most, I wouldn't even say shocking, but the most obvious. So, to Stevie's point, we've got behind the scenes feels here. So, to the point of being a background character or an NPC, helping in the background or just seeing how things are going. And then straight away, it's like a punch in the dark. It's just straight away, as we get deeper into the season, you've got these planets coming over into your whole sign first house. And yeah, keep an eye out for that Mars, see what that does. But that Mars is exalted. So you might just get a rush of energy depending on what goes on. It rules the fourth house. It might tie in some themes of home life as well. But on the shadow side of that Mars, just be careful with any sharp instruments if you're cooking in the kitchen, things of that nature. If that Mars ends up hitting your ascendant degree, if you're early there. And
Mhm.
but what I really want, what I look forward for you, Capricorn Rising, is that Venus eventually is going to make its way into the first house. So I always say with this, if you've been working hard or life has been a bit cumbersome, I know for you, your chart ruler, you've not been enjoying too much for a time. It dipped its toes into its fall in an angular house, so there might have been issues with home life for a period. Now it's back into the whole sign. Third house, it's direct, so it's going to come back and talk about those issues. Neptune stationing to go direct, eventually going into the fourth. So I'd use this little bit of respite, if you can call it that, as that Venus comes over to your first house, is you deserve it. Go and take a bloody break. Go and pamper yourself. Go and do something that you enjoy, whether it's getting a new outfit, going for a massage, whatever you enjoy in life. With Venus in Capricorn, to Stevie's point at the beginning of the video, it doesn't have to be extravagant. And I don't know too many Capricorns risings who are extravagant. Maybe things that are act of love or something that you can do yourself to love yourself in a sense without
Mhm.
being too what's the word?
Yeah.
I don't know.
A little
Cheesy.
too
I don't
cheesy.
know.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I do think we're getting into the zone where we're like also getting into like tattoo season for Capricorns because you have your exalted Mars, you have Venus there, so you're getting a good combination. You have the sun there. So I think that if people were on the fence or planning for something, I like all of this stuff there, at least for us. And maybe for Scorpios as well. I think Scorpios risings as well could be a good tattoo time period for you too. But I like that for us a lot. So um that might be in the plans. Yeah, Cal, I feel sort of like you do as you're a Libra rising, so we're both cardinal here. And I feel similar to you about Neptune and Saturn moving on. It's like I don't want them to be in that angular situation, but I feel like I've lost my freaking mind at this point. And I'm like, I don't know what's real anymore, but I know that I know that I can make a move in a cardinal fire sign. I know that I will imagine something. There will be a fire within me to a passion to change, so to speak. Yeah, it just the going from the mutable water to the cardinal fire, it's almost like going from a cloud of smoke to a needle prick where you can just precisely see something for what it is, or even like a bullet point, going from like an opera to a bullet point, and it just feels like I'm so ready. I don't want the angularity of it all, but I'm so ready for that sort of like a level of clarity that will emerge with that fire, sort of burning it out.
I think that's
Um,
so beautifully put, Stevie, and talking about, and that goes for, as you say, a lot of cardinal rising charts as well. So even, yeah, the tension with the angularity, but some clarity of, okay, can we finally start moving, get going,
mhm,
get moving? Yeah, I love
absolutely.
that.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
and like I think you brought it up for us, Cap. So we have our Saturn going direct now, and so things are moving along again. And let's go. Let's go into Aries.
Absolutely. Okay, into our Aquarius rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Aquarius, the beginning of the month, you have that sweet Venus sextile your Pluto in the first. So as far as having Pluto going through your first, I actually think it's really important for you to find these times. Especially you want to say when you have Venus in a situation where she's not in detriment. As you know, Aries is a sign of detriment. So Libra, Sag, Gemini, when Venus is sextiling or trine Pluto in your first, I would definitely use those as like almost like elections if I could, like to improve myself with Pluto in the first. It's sort of like, Jupiter is going to eventually emerge, and it just takes so much longer with Jupiter, and with Venus you have a few chances throughout the year to do this. So in this case it's from your 11th house to the first. So in this case it's like join a group, do something personally motivated that gives you power and control in a healthy way of personal expression. And if you could do that through, in this case, the 11th house, that looks really great. And then so you just want to keep your eyes on those special times. For a lot of us, this is just like Venus sextiling Pluto. But I think for Aquarius is going through this long process of Pluto in the first, these are going to be really really special building blocks for years to come of coping with Pluto in the first.
Yeah, wonderful point, Stevie. And I think for you, Aquarius Rising, like all the fixed signs, with a lot of mutable energy in the skies, it can be a little bit frustrating. You need to adjust yourselves to a certain degree. Of course, you've got to look at your own chart, especially if you have a preponderance of fixed planets in your own chart and a fixed angles. That can be a little bit cumbersome. And I think like Capricorn risings, that Saturn for a while now has been a bit of an issue. And I think for you, I think it's more of this, with Neptune stationing to go direct, we've still got the financial axis going on. So then just keep an eye out for those financial themes, those pictures. We've still got the South Node going through the eighth and the Saturn and Neptune in the second. So some of those issues might be coming around, especially with Neptune starting to go direct. I mean, it can make, many different ways, but at the critical degree, it just might be some confusion around maybe financial matters or your income, things of that nature. But of course, you have to look at your own chart. But I really love what you were saying, Stevie, about incorporating or using that energy out with community groups and friendships. That's very much highlighted this month in the whole sign 11th house, and really utilizing that energy. We've got Jupiter exalted retrograde, but it's ruling that house as well. So there is some benefic energy going on, even though retrograde. But yeah, Stevie, I wholeheartedly agree with your points for Aquarius risings.
Mhm. We, you really dug into the Jupiter retro last month, or for this month, sorry, but I do just want to circuit back that now, of course, you've kind of experienced that. So I am wondering a little bit about Aquarius risings. You have Jupiter making that kind of water trine to Saturn, now moving away from it a little bit. Um, but yeah, this retrograde for you. So if there is any kind of health or small animal or kind of sixth house stuff that you might also, it might really be setting in that you're on a new trajectory of that same journey at this point for your sixth house. Yeah, so you're gonna definitely see that, and that could also be in kind of like tandem with that second house financial strain as well. With it being work, could be like receiving less work hours, or like first you thought you were gonna get a promotion and then you weren't, or some kind of unexpected thing like that. And so you just want to give it patience and remember that's Jupiter retrograding. It is going to go direct again, and there's going to be good aspects to it that come about throughout the following months.
Wonderful point, Stevie. And I think patience is the key word is there as well. So I wholeheartedly agree. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's kind of like you said with the fixed signs don't want to change things, but they are good at patience. You
Yeah.
sort of are good at just having that. So I think all of us people with fixed placements could really, I think that's a great keyword for us this month for all the fixed placements struggling with the mutable stuff. So thanks, Cal. I'm gonna
No,
remember.
excellent. Absolutely. Great point. Okay, last but certainly not least, our Pisces rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts.
Yes. Yeah, Pisces, if you aren't a siren who is taking in sailors, who's imprisoning sailors and taking their life vitality from them and keeping them from their voyages, I don't know what you're doing with your life at this point, but by the time Neptune goes direct, you better be a siren. I mean, do you even know what you are anymore? You were like, I was old man in the sea, now I'm like a mermaid, and now I'm like, um, it's just so much going on. I think that the stationary direct is the ultimate piss off. Get out of my first. We've reached like the pinnacle of that sentiment in this case. And of course, just the caveat of Jupiter being retrograde, your ruling planet is now retrograde. And so there is that forward momentum that for you, uh, again, with Sagittarius is a little bit wonky because you have Neptune in the first going direct, but you have your ruling planet retrograde. And then in the midst of all that, you have a lot of these 10th house squares. So a lot of probably feeling like performative stuff. Um, and hopefully it doesn't feel performative. Hopefully, like this direct motion of Neptune can help you like actually unmask in a sense if you have been masking.
Yeah, those are really great points. And I think for some of you, Pisces rising, of course, career and public standing are highlighted by the faster moving planets. But with it's the greater benefic. Yes, it's exalted, but retrograde, ruling that 10th house. For some of you, it might just be a question of, especially as we get into 2026, it's kind of like, what I'm doing in life, is this the right direction? Is this where I want to be? Is this the career I really want? With the mutability of that 10th house as well, there can be an ability to adjust and to change. So with that Jupiter retrograde ruling the 10th, might just be a case of, is this really what I want to be doing? Or is there some adjustments that I need to make as I plan for 2026,
Mhm.
which speaks to the point of Mercury is quite highly elevated, transiting above the horizon. So,
Mhm.
especially as Mercury goes back through in the whole sign 10th house being angular, this is going to be a great month to really note down what you want out of life, particularly in areas of career, what you want to be doing. Write those now notes down for eventually when those planets maybe get a bit more Earth infused into them and a bit more cardinality, then eventually
Mhm.
as we get into 2026, you can start to take action on some of those ideas. I'm sure all of you are sick and tired of the Saturn Neptune story in the whole sign first house, especially if you've got late degrees of Pisces rising. But fortunately, yes, we've got Neptune at the critical degree, stationing to go direct. That's going to be the last song and dance for that Neptune. And for you, I think it's just, if life has been a bit sluggish for a long period of time now, I think eventually, not quite yet to that point, but getting those two planets out of the first house, if you felt a bit drained or just nebulous in a sense of who am I, what am I doing, speaking to Stevie's point, hopefully you're a siren now at this point, just some of those very nebulous
Mhm.
points of who am I, where am I going, what am I doing next are going to be the key themes and questions you have to ask yourselves at the
Mhm.
end of this year as you go into 2026.
Yeah, and I when you said that it I think it became apparent to me that could be here's my dating advice for you guys too. Um, the Jupiter ruling your first and the fifth retrograde. So are there some kind of non-committed relationships that are did you go into what is it called cuffing season? That's so Saturn is like I need to be in a relationship. That's like, the fifth house, I guess, and maybe this is just me and my problem. So some of you probably have the same, where you get your fifth house and your seventh house confused a little bit. They don't really work fully together harmoniously, and you have to sort of like learn how that relationship can be healthy. Okay. So that's what's going on with y'all right now because you have Saturn there. It's bringing some sobriety, some like boundaries, some like sluggishness. Then you have this like really fun experience happening in your fifth. But then, especially this month, your partners are very, very active doing all kinds of crazy things. Mercury ruling your partnership is Mercury is like the main aspects of things going on this month. So your partnerships are going to be a lot, and it could be with this grand trine very similar to that vibe of like what's going forward, what's not, and then you sort of get it to the 10th house, and then you have that sort of forced tension, forced angular dealing with it happening. And I think what I'm looking forward for Pisces is definitely longer in the future when you have Saturn and Neptune out of the first, but you still have Jupiter in the first or in the fifth. There's gonna be a lot more of like you're gonna be like able to leave your baggage and just like actually be like, what is the fifth without this baggage that I'm carrying around with me? And I'm looking forward to that for you guys.
Yeah, me too. That's a really great point, Stevie. And I think as we get into next year's, I mean, there's not going to be without its issues because
Mhm.
eventually that Saturn Neptune, you're going to be having issues with maybe a financial picture, but we'll get into that as we get into later episodes. Absolutely wonderful. Well, Stevie, again, thank you so much for going through not only the first couple of weeks of December and the potentials, but going through each of the rising signs. It's always a pleasure to have you on with your brilliant insights. So, what's going on for you? What can you tell the audience? What can people, where they can find you, and also what's coming up for you?
Thanks, Cal. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's so fun to do this with you. I am gonna be working with Enid T104 delineation synthesis in winter term here at Kepler. So look out for that. And um I just wanted to circle back to the moon to benefics. I didn't say this at the time, but I did want to note, um, definitely check I didn't write the glyphs on, I don't think, but you want to definitely check. There are a few with the exalted moon in Taurus, with the moon in Libra sign. So those are just a very raw data, but you want to go in and look at those days and see what the moon is doing to actually pick the best ones. And I didn't add that caveat before, so I just had to follow up with that. But yeah, Kepler delineation with Enid winter term.
Wonderful. And where can people find you? Are you on any socials or
Socials,
anything?
yep, Cosmics Comics, because I think I'm funny.
I love it. Well, for everybody watching, I'll leave all the links in the descriptions, in the comments, and description boxes. And again, Stevie, I love it so much, our interactions with these forecasts. And everyone will see you again for where are we? January, February, March, right? No? Mutual
Yep,
again?
we'll see you
Yeah.
in spring.
So thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.